All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. As I said, my name is Mara Welton. I'm Director of Programs here at Slow Food USA, and I'm so excited to have so many folks joining us to hear all about slow fish. We have several speakers today, and we're going to be get it kicked off here with Collis Stowell from the One Fish Foundation, but also head of the Oversight Committee for the Slow Fish Working Group, and also Kevin Scribner, who has been very involved with all things slow fish from the get-go, and also has been one of our snail blazers in past years. So welcome everyone, welcome Collis and Kevin, and I'm gonna turn it over to you, Collis.
Thank you very much, Mara. Hello everyone. We're gonna have a great conversation today. It's always great to bring people into the conversation about slow fish and slow seafood. I mean, where your seafood comes from matters. And as Mara mentioned, I'm president of One Fish Foundation, which is a sustainable seafood education nonprofit here in Maine, where I am, and talking about where seafood comes from elementary school kids all the way up into college and into communities. And it's an important question to ask, where your seafood comes from. And we're going to hear about why that matters from the different perspectives here. So just going to do a quick introduction here of the people that we have that are going to share some stories with you, some perspectives. And then I'm going to set the table a little bit and turn it over to Kevin. We ask you, if you have any questions at any time, please pose them in the chat section, or, use the Q&A, but the chat section is just fine. And Mara and Brian will keep track of that, and we'll address them as we get along, because this is sort of an interactive conversation. So to introduce our panel, first of all, we'll be hearing from Kevin Scribner. You see him there with the hat on. He happens to be in Hawaii, and we're all jealous of that here in the Northeast. We're about to get snowed under. We'll also be hearing from Scott Steen. He's Executive Director for Slow Food in the Tetons. And he's going to be talking about what it's like to be getting beautiful wild salmon from Steve Currian, who is captain of the Ava Jane and also co-owns Pride of Bristol Bay and Wild for Salmon with his wife. And they do an amazing job in bringing amazingly fresh seafood coming from the Pacific Northwest. And we'll also hear from Captain Tim Ryder, who is right there, just turn around in his office chair. He's got his shades on all the time. That's like part of his everyday wear. And he is with New England Fishmongers based in Kittery, Maine. And they've just opened up a magnificent retail store. And he's going to talk about some of the seafood dinner events that he has hosted with Slow Fish and with One Fish Foundation. I just want to step back just a little bit about why we're doing this. It's important, as we're all here, we all have a really strong focus about knowing where our food comes from, because that's becoming so important now. And it's very true with seafood, particularly in a situation where we're dealing with, up to 90% of our seafood that we eat in this country is imported. So knowing where the seafood comes from matters. What we would like to do with Slow Fish North America, and what we've been working with Mara and Anna Moulet and a whole breadth of the team at Slow Food USA, is to finding more ways to collaborate and bring the slow fish values, which are the same as the slow food values, good, clean, fair, into more chapters. And so what we're going to talk about today is ways to do that and open up more conversations so that you can bring these conversations and potentially have relationships with people like Steve Currian and Tim Ryder and other local fishermen that we can help you find, so that we can have these conversations and bring these values forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, because Kevin's going to talk about some of the projects we've been working at with the Slow Fish North America Oversight Team. So Kevin?
Right, thanks, Collis, and happy to be here with all of you. I'm the owner of Forever Wild Seafood, and I spent 20 years fishing up in the same area that Steve does now. And back when I had a beard that was the color of Steve, Steve, you're destined to look like me someday. That's, yeah, you're on mute, Steve. There we go. Yeah. And yeah, Steve, you're still, your volume's not coming through, so that's a good check. Yeah, so anyway, the other thing is interesting, back in the 80s when I was fishing in Bristol Bay for herring, we were running out of food on the boat, and so I had to go foraging, and I actually foraged for snails up in Togiak Bay. So, Togiak Bay and Bristol Bay has a Snail Approval Award for me there. So the other thing is, yes, it's to get into the subject matter today is, so I've attended 2 Terra Madres. We've had 2 Slowfish North America sessions, the last one in San Francisco, 2018, and we had some of Steve's fish there. We were going to have one in 2020 in New England, but that's on a hiatus for all the reasons we all know now. I attended 3 Slow Food Nations. So I have an experience of what it's like to go to where the call is to go either nationally, hemispherically, or internationally to one place to meet. And it was at the Slow Food Nations, actually in 2017, the inaugural Nations, when Collis and I and a couple other folks, we set up a seafood shop on the street. Some of you may came by and enjoyed the seafood we had there. But in addition to that being a heck of a lot of work and asking people to come all over the country to Denver to have that experience, we pondered about that and what could we learn from that. And we came away from that saying, well, what if we brought slow fish to each chapter instead of having the chapters come to one site? So that gave rise to the rising tide concept. And Mara, if you'll put the slide deck up now, I'll just briefly run through what we're looking for that to be. So I'm going to go ahead for those folks who may not be on visual connecting. I'll just actually read what the slides have. So this is the Slowfish North America. We call it the Rising Tide Initiative. And that comes from that saying that, rising tide floats all boats. Well, actually, we almost had a tsunami scare out here after the Tonga volcano. So in Hawaii, there's a little bit of and the West Coast, a little apprehension about some rising tides. But anyway, the Rising Tide Initiative, it's to bring slow fish value, seafood stories, fisher harvesters, producers to meet slow food chapters where they are. So next. So the purpose of Rising Tide is share widely the story of slow fish values-based community seafood systems to foster understanding, respect, support, and joy for sustainable seafood, their source ecosystems, and the humans who provide this wonderful food. So this is what a process, a planning process, organizing process that we in Slow Fish use, which is we identified purpose, outcomes, and process. We call it the POP system. So in this slide deck, you'll just see the purpose, which I just related to you. So next, Mara. So the Rising Tide Initiative promotes and supports local slow fish seafood events occurring across North America that are co-hosted by slow food chapters and local communities. Chapter communities are offered what we call an a la carte menu of prospective activities to provide a customized event suitable to each chapter. So again, this is that idea of bringing slow fish and slow fish values, producers, the whole host of what is associated with slow food to each chapter to co-host an event. Next. So, and central to the Rising Tide will be the following informational sources. So Slowfish 101 is a recording of Collis being interviewed or giving on a leadership summit or some of the mechanisms through Slow Food USA about Slowfish, what we call Slowfish 101. And this recapitulates a presentation Collis gave at Slowfish San Francisco in 1918. So we want to get these presentations recorded so they can be part of the legacy, archived legacy of information. The second one, Slowfish 201, this is a series of webinars, I think call us 5 or maybe 6, that are now archived at localcatch.org, where we systematically went through the supply chain with a lens of slow fish values. So we started from the water and ended up with the consumers, chefs and the consumers. So that's also the, the foundational information about slow fish. So that's always available, and that will be underlying, informing each of the, any and all of the rising tide events. So next, Mara. So this is going to just end my shtick here is, so when I talk about an a la carte menu, this is just an example of some of the things, offerings that Slowfish will offer to a slow food chapter. And anyone, so a local catch workshops. There we go. Did we lose it? We're back to it. So you can just, we have local catch workshops, which, and that the key on that is just, as Colin said, is to build the relationships between slow food members and our fisher harvesters, fishmongers, and processors. And what we will do is, if you've got a chapter in North Carolina, we'll work to see who are the local fisher harvesters to connect with, as well as also, as Steve and Scott will talk about, is the ability to connect over distance, because we've got providers like Steve who can send you Alaska fish any place in the country. So you don't have to necessarily go to Alaska for that. And so those are those workshops to make the connection together. Collis has been doing no fish dinners, and this is an event at using the dinner format to make those connections happen and to build the relationships. Seafood Throwdown is like a fun cook-off competition. It's been modeled at farmers markets. We did one at Slowfish San Francisco. And for those folks who have an appetite to dive into policy, we will provide thought leaders to help do that. Information sentences. And then lastly, one of the things that we're really keen on is to build a sense of a marketplace within slow food. And so to have slow food chapter members know that they can, that there's local seafood they can purchase, but there's also a nationally available seafood. So we want to really be able to herald and highlight a marketplace format, so we can sustain our fisher harvesters throughout the country. And I think that's a good prelude to the next subject, Collis, bringing in, we're talking about the connection between Bristol Bay and the Tetons. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Kevin. And one thing about those no fish dinners, and Captain Tim will talk about those. That was a collaboration with New England fishmongers in doing that. But this is a great segue into having Scott Steen from Slow Food and Tetons talk a bit about how he in that community decided on, how this whole process evolved in forming the relationship with Pride of Bristol Bay and Steve Currian and making that connection. So Scott, if you could take it away for that, please.
And Mara, I think we can go back to the gallery. We don't need to have the slide. There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Collis. I'm Scott Steen with Slow Food in the Tetons. We're a chapter of Slow Food USA. We're out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and our chapter's been around for maybe 13 or 14 years, and we're a relatively robust chapter. We run farmers markets and farm stands, lots of educational programming like summer camps, cooking classes, and we do some food access work. And generally, we work year-round, and we have a team of 4. But we've been involved in Pride of Bristol Bay and in bringing salmon to our community since 2015 or 16, where it was all kind of, we got lucky. It was word of mouth. One of the local farmers here happened to know somebody who was going back and forth from Alaska, who lived in Sun Valley, Idaho. anyway, it was kind of word of mouth, and we got a hold of this this fisherman, and my wife actually works for Trout Unlimited, so there's another connection there. So our first fundraising event that we decided to do would fundraise for both Slow Food in the Tetons and Trout Unlimited. And so the goals, the goals of this partnership, actually what we do to has changed a little bit over time, but the goals are really to bring a healthy, sustainable, and affordable protein to our community. We're landlocked. We're up in the mountains. There's a lot of elk, a lot of potatoes, maybe some root vegetables, but not much else. So that's really important. And we also, another goal was to establish a direct to consumer connection with a fisherman, with somebody, with a seafood provider, in order to have that strong relationship that's so important, the consumer provider or producer relationship, and also to maintain transparency. And it's been such a gift for our community to have this amazing wild caught salmon connection. And then the third goal of all this was to raise some funding for Slow Food in the Tetons. We that's changed how we've done that a little bit, but Pride of Bristol Bay and now Steve Curry, they've sponsored Slow Food in the Tetons for several years now, and it's been extremely helpful. Not only are we able to achieve our mission through bringing food to our community, but we're able to make some money while we do it. It sounds like there's a lot of overlap between, Kevin, what you kind of presented with the Rising Tides initiative and what we sort of already have been doing. But our first model was we run a farmer's market, was to actually just bring a bunch of grills in and grill up some delicious salmon with some sauteed vegetables and locally made bread on the side, and just sell those plates. So it's kind of like an outdoor dinner, and we raised some money that way, and the salmon was donated. That was a lot of fun, and we raised a lot of awareness as well. And in more recent years, we've moved away from that a little bit and focused more on the buying club. And Steve, I'm sure we'll talk about that. But we have helped him to tap into our network of extremely interested consumers who want to get a hold of that salmon. It's amazing. And the network has grown over the years, and Steve has been able to give us a percentage of proceeds as a sponsorship. And he's actually been able to come out to Jackson Hole several different times to be a part of this. And that's just so important. It's just amazing when a consumer can look you in the eye, Steve, and shake your hand and hear about where the fish comes from. I hope I'm not taking any of your material right now, but anyway, it's been delightful. And we're so thankful to have that connection. And I'm happy to answer any questions whenever the time is right.
All right. Well, thanks, Scott. It's a great narrative. And I think we're just going to switch right over to Steve and get his perspective from that part of the relationship. But also, I think, Steve, it would be good to hear a little bit about the type of fishing you do and why those fish that you're catching is coming from a very responsibly, probably one of the best managed fisheries in the country.
Got me loud and clear?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Collis and Kevin, and good seeing you, Scott. Yeah, Bristol Bay, I mean, it's been on everybody's radar. Pebble Mine has really brought it to attention. But after fishing there 19 seasons, it's really unique in the sense that it was one of the last kind of fisheries to be commercialized, and that the biologists have kind of set forth up front the rules, and big industry doesn't run the place. So as a natural resource manager from my college days, like it's an amazing fishery, and we're blessed with being able to have it protected in such a way that it now is a benchmark for the rest of the fisheries to get back to. And so the biology really allows the sustainability every year by allowing the right amount of fish to escape. And there's no real human interaction besides the native culture. So you don't have the farming and the mining at this point destroying the ecosystem. And to me, it's really about, our business and model is about connecting wild protein to people and allowing them to think about the ecosystem that it comes from, and tying it all together to then take it to wherever they are in the country, and like realizing the importance of clean water and nutritious food. And so that's kind of been a big part of our push from the very beginning. And then as we've got further along, wanting to make sure that, you realize the quality of seafood that people have access to and the transparency issue. And I grew up with, my father was a custom butcher. So I kind of was out in the butcher shop all the time, bring the food in, throw it on the table. Like, I didn't understand this concept into my early 20s of like having to go to a grocery store and wonder what that fish, like where it came from, how it was handled. And so as we started to sell our catch, it became really a fun task to be able to show the customers and hand deliver it, just like Tim Ryder does. And, Kevin, the product that you're catching or caught and is just, it becomes part of what you do, of being able to hand somebody a fillet and look them in the eyes and tell them where it came from. And that's what kind of the big industry is missing. And so by being able to connect with the slow food in the Tetons, and we've also connected with other slow food chapters, and it just allows us to provide it directly to a customer base that's really already looking for the product. And as Scott said, I came out to Jackson Hole this fall at the Fall Buying Club, and I did a cooking class. And we had a small turnout. It wasn't really big, but the people were really enthused, and they learned so much about cooking. And they all know how to cook, but they learned so much about how to cook that salmon and when the right point of taking it off. And you get to ask, or they get to ask, those integral questions. And I think it really leaves a big impression on them, and they take that with them. So it's not just getting them wild protein, but it's also educating them along the way, and like Scott said, really developing that relationship with the people in that region. Did I answer your question? Is there more? Can I go on there?
Well, no, that's a great point, Steve, because what you kept touching on is getting back to the story of the seafood, the fish. And that's kind of what brings everybody together is, people certainly in this crowd, knowing the story of the seafood is critical. And being able to, as you said, shake your hand, that makes a big difference, because then it's not a mystery. And for people who care about their food, as you said, going into a market and having this question of not knowing what the hell you're buying, having a face behind it, making these connections. Like I said in the email sending out, the definition of local is becoming less about geography and more about relationships. It's, making these relationships, and that's what these connections that we're talking about. And I'm going to use that segue to turn it over to Captain Tim. Tim and I have known each other for, a long time, since probably 2015, 2016, something like that. And since then, we've done a number of these no fish dinners, KNOW, know your fish, kind of no fish dinners at different restaurants in the seacoast of New Hampshire and Maine. They've all been well attended, and the people who've attended them have had great questions and have made connections and have probably become very good and loyal customers in Tim's ever-growing fan base in the seacoast. So Tim, if you could talk a little bit about, those kinds of relationships you've had, focus, like your business model focus on, switching over to more customer-facing transactions and those relationships, that'd be great.
Yeah, you guys got me? Am I off speaker? So
yes.
Before I lead in, how the Slow Fish Network works, which is, you guys saw me opening the door here right at the beginning, and that's Ryan Horwith. Ryan Horwith is an Alaskan fisherman. Call us, you know him. Kevin, you know Ryan, right?
Yes. Yes.
So Ryan's out here from Buffalo, filling his truck with stuff that skulls off Finlander 2 from yesterday's trip, and getting some salmon products that I had, some New England Fishmongers chowder, and a bunch of stuff to go back and start working that stuff out of his market. So that's Ryan, and he brought me some of his specific cod he caught, or whatever I don't know all the Pacific lingo, some sort of silly cod you guys catch in Alaska. And he freezes some and we use it for chowder. So that's like good that happened right there, because that's why these conversations happen, right? We've all got to know each other. Kevin, I've been blessed to know Kevin since the beginning of this whole thing, and Cullis. Cullis says, I see Cullis all the time. He's very helpful. I play games with Cullis a lot. I always ignore his phone calls multiple times just to annoy him. But anyways, leaning into that, the dinner plan, we obviously changed a lot over the years of what I do, and I'm still fishing. I don't have the boat today. Asher's got it today. I had my trips last weekend. I did catch more than him though. I'm really happy because I want to hear it from him since he's 19 years old. But it's, you know, I'm off the boat and what's going on here right now is we're transitioning our new storefront and we have a storefront and restaurant into a event dinner tonight, which we actually sold out. We have that tonight here. So they're getting prepped out up there, and I'll probably have to take my, put my proper attire on, which is a shirt that isn't covered in oil here shortly. And we'll have guests start coming in here at about 5 o'clock tonight. We've got scallops from our boat on the menu over some sort of pasta. We've got the oysters from Dharmascotta. We got salmon for the salmon. Steve, I don't know if I probably know you from something, but we've got salmon collars tonight, and Jacoby salmon knuckles and collars that they're doing. So that's a good, and I really push that stuff wicked hard, trying to get people to use stuff that they don't normally use. So we had some of that. We're doing that. I guess I don't know what the chefs do. They do their own chef thing, but it's going to be really good. And I'm really excited to have this platform because obviously I'm a business and people are going to be buying drinks and oysters and having a good time. Doesn't pay for itself, obviously, but it's good, keeps my people working, and we will talk policy tonight a little bit. People ask me what's going on, and it is an opportunity to get that message across. Hey, this is salmon from Alaska. These guys actually still catch the salmon. In New England, we don't have salmon. So people just, don't even know what it is. And using an underutilized part of the species like the collars, or understanding how hard it is for us to catch scallops in the climate of New England fishing. Our climate in New England fishing, you have a greatly managed fishery, Steve. Ours managed a dog shit. Okay. Our fishery sucks here. It's managed by like corporate America. It's being bought out every day. And I've been pissed off about it as long as I've been on this, because the access is totally dead here. There's barely anyone young getting into it. It's terrible what's going on here. Even just this year alone, I took a big hit in hook fishing where we were allowed to go hook fishing in certain areas, target pollock, put cameras on our boat so we would show them what we were doing. Once they got what they wanted out of us, they took away the access to the areas. Don't have the cameras, don't have the access. So people hear about that, and they heard about the last dinner, and tonight they'll hear about our next battle in fishing, which is what we're facing on the permitting end. There's some companies that have really seen what's going on with permitting, and they look like a real estate company. When you go on, it's a brokerage of how to get these permits, and the prices keep going up, and the access to limited to smaller people that don't have huge backing goes down. So we'll be talking about that tonight a lot as we're trying to get into our federal scallop fishery here, because we want to stay scalloping longer, and those permits are going through the roof right now because of the price of scallops. There's a lot of challenges in the business, and the cost of doing business, Steve, I bet you know really well right now, if you're fishing, that your cost of everything you do on the boat keeps going up, right? It's getting harder and harder to get the stuff we need to do our jobs. And that is partly with the COVID situation, obviously, but it's really straining our business at a lot of levels. I think people are feeling it. I felt it on the boat this summer, trying to rebuild the boat. And so we'll be talking about that type of stuff. It's a really good platform to get people, to do this. I know Cullis I will be talking about doing one of his dinners soon, and I hope to have the slow fish gathering once the dust settles from whatever's going on in this world here. For sure, I've got a platform to do it. Not that I ever figured I'd have a restaurant, like I even know what I'm doing up there, but I pretend like I know what I'm doing, and I've got good people up there, and tonight it's a really good way. And sourcing is, important for these dinners. Obviously, I want to showcase wild caught fish, tonight, and scallops from our boat, tell people what's going on, and that's what we're doing as we lean into March here. The next targeted sourcing thing will be probably halibut collars from Alaska to go with probably scallops, because we're still scalloping and stuff like that. So getting people to use things that they normally wouldn't use, and those things are really good value products for us to sell, and they're actually really good. I believe they're really good value products for folks like Steve. I don't know Steve, but I keep picking on him because he's an Alaskan fisherman. But it's if you get your money for the collars off the fish, it's a good thing. For that's some of the best money you make in this business is off the stuff that you would normally throw away. Chowder, where we make chowder now, so that's a great thing. You throw all this. It's like a slow cooker. I think you throw anything in there, in a chowder. So, but that's what we're doing, and we're getting ready for that tonight. Get my game face on here soon, and get up there and do what I do, and use your customer base too for those that help you in your what you're doing. I'm making a really big push this year to go after the consolidation of permits. I am going to be making a really big push to get a federal scallop permit for my boat, and our customer base is going to help us do that. Not an investment firm that wants to take every bit of equity out of your life and own you. And I'm convinced I can do it, and I'm picking a battle with someone that's got a lot of money and owns that world, and my customer base is going to know that they're helping us do it, and not that way. So that's what these platforms are good for, and get your story across, because we have a tough one in New England.
Hey, Collis. Hey, thanks, Tim. And Collis, if I may, ask Steve to respond to Tim in that about Tim. Steve, talk about the abundance in Bristol Bay now, and then also re-echo, what you alluded to before, which is how the Bristol Bay is a small boat fishery, individually owned permit. There's no industrial. You said there's no industrial fishing there, but speak to those 2 points.
Yeah, so Bristol Bay is a limited permit entry fishery, and there's only roughly about 1,700 permits. And the way it's set up by law, you can only fish one under your name. You can fish two on a boat, so you can own more than one, but you can't fish more than one at any given time. So it really keeps it in the hands of the individuals, and it's really important that it stays that way. And I think that we've got a solid foundation that there's no real change looking in the future. And so that's amazing, because it does have 1,500, 1,400 different boats fishing in a given year, and families, and that equates to like 15,000 people in Bristol Bay that are partaking in this fishery. So that has been one of the things, like, I really feel for the New England fishermen, because I feel like they've lost that upper hand, and Bristol Bay still has that, and it's really important to get the word out and make sure that we're protecting that, and that doesn't change. And that also goes into the mining and anything that could change Bristol Bay, because if you look around the globe, salmon used to be everywhere, for the most part. Europe, East Coast, West Coast, and where people have developed, we lose our wild salmon species. So with Bristol Bay being as prolific as it is, and we've been seeing runs in the 50, 60 million, pushing an estimate of 70 million this year with the projections. It's really amazing that we have this, as I like to think of it, this underwater migration of fish. It reminds me of the snow geese migration, and it's amazing how much fish the ocean is able to put up and feed, if you will, to allow to come back to Bristol Bay if it's well managed. And a lot of our conversation with our customers, and when we're doing cooking events or just speaking, it's really trying to connect people to the food, just like Tim is talking about with these dinners. And Tim, I think that's amazing. I've always kind of thought about a restaurant piece, and then I've always gotten scared and just said, I don't want to go that far. But I think it's like this platform is where we need to be connecting with one person at a time, shaking their hand. It goes so far in building those relationships and understanding the food and using, like you said, the collars, or, supporting another local fisherman. I mean, some of the, you were talking about Yacobi Fisheries in Southeast. We support Chris and Seth, and they do an amazing job. And, so we keep that together, and they were just up against they're renting a facility off of the city, and another person wants to buy that. So they were at the town hall meetings. And so I presented a letter, basically just stating on how important their business is to us and the food chain down the line, and that we need to protect that. So I think, like, there's events happening all over the place that are kind of like trying to take away these wild fisheries or the stock, or take it out of the small boat fisheries hands. And, the work that Collis does, Kevin, everybody here is contributing to protecting that and building, or at least maintaining the family fisheries that kind of have built this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a great point, Steve. And that's one thing I wanted to reflect. And there's a couple of questions in the chat section that I want to sort of steer to a little bit, but sort of knit it together. Every fishery around this country, I mean, first of all, when I'm talking to my students, collectively, the United States has some of the best managed fisheries in the world. That's just a fact. But that doesn't mean that there aren't challenges, because there are. And each fishery, and Tim you heard it from Tim, you heard it from Steve, each fishery has its own dynamic and how it is managed. For example, in Bristol Bay, fishermen got to the point where they had more of a say in how that fishery is managed. So they've got buy-in. And now, so Steve was talking about the real-time escapement. So they've got biologists that are tracking how many sockeye are passing through that are going to sustain the population. And when they come in and they shut down the fishery by 2 o'clock in the morning or something, when they shut it down, everybody stops. And everybody stops because they know what's at stake and they bought into it. And what's happened in New England is the fishermen don't have as much of a voice, or did not have as much of a voice at the outset in how the fishery is managed. That is the whole broad spectrum of fishermen. There are some fishermen who, as Tim alluded to, who have a lot of resources, have a lot of financial resources, and they own a lot of access to the fishery, and therefore they can dictate some things. But for smaller scale community-based fishermen like Tim, it's a different landscape. So it's more work to try to affect change. So that's why it's important. Why it's important to be having these conversations. As Tim said, one conversation at a time. That's one of my mantras with One Fish Foundation, one conversation at a time. So having these kinds of integrated collaborative events and restaurant events like Fernando was talking about, which would be awesome at the Cooks Alliance, those kinds of things would be great, because it gives a chance for people to meet the fishermen who caught the fish that they're eating and get the backstory and understand that some of these challenges like Tim is talking about that are so important. One thing, just talking about Tim and, some of the work that he's done, he's been to Capitol Hill, talking a lot about, making sure that not just the wealthiest, biggest fishing businesses have access to the fishery, but that, everyone has at least a fair access to it. He's done a lot of work on that and, speaking out on behalf of the community-based fishermen. And he's done a lot of work with Slow Fish in terms of advocating the values that we're talking about, good, clean, fair, all of that, around fisheries, meaning fair access, fair price to the fishermen, fish that's been honored and respected and how it's been processed, all of that. So in fact, in light of the work that Tim has done, for the past 10 years in conjunction with Slow Fish, the oversight team for Slow Fish North America has come together, and we've decided that we're going to adopt the Snail of Approval Award that Slow food recipients receive. And so the first Slow Fish North America Snail of Approval Award will go to New England fishmongers for the work that they have done. And you know, it really is it's a straightforward choice because of, you know, Tim's put himself on the line, you know, speaking out at meetings where he knows that he could get some backlash. But he's doing it in ways that he is uplifting the story of the community-based fisheries that he supports and bringing that message to his customers. And that's why he has like over 16,000 people that are big fans on Facebook that are chasing him around. So Tim?
Come on, Tim, zoom in. So I want to see you blush.
I don't know how
man.
to zoom in. Well, I'll slide in closer. Thank you, Collis, and thank you guys. It's I can't thank you guys enough. I love you guys. Kevin, I remember sitting in the lobby and a local catch. I shouldn't, you know, that's a competition, I guess. But I remember talking to you for the first time in the lobby about what's going on after hours and stuff. And you know, it's now I face it at a different level. I face it here off the water now. It hasn't been popular received that I'm doing this by some folks in the industry. I've been kind of blacklisted by certain places to get shellfish that, you know, they're wholesalers because I'm what I stand for, some backdoor policy stuff. But you know what? You just shrug it off and just, if you're doing the right thing, keep doing it the best you can. And, you know, I honestly, I hate to be the doom and gloom part of the policy work that I've done politically. I've kind of honestly, I shy away from it now, where the best policy work you do is with your customers and your followers. It really is. You get more help from them than you do from like a politician, because people ask me like politically is, oh, well, what does your senator think? Well, they don't do anything. I don't think they did anything before. So it's, you know, you get the help you need from your community. And I hope as we, you know, not that I expected to be in this position, you know, several years ago, but I can help other people too. I mean, you know, if something's going on in Alaska, we sell a lot Alaskan salmon, so I can say, hey, this is what's going on in Steve's neck of the woods. Need to fight backdoor policy in Alaska done here. Like, hey, this guy needs help. We got to give him some help. If you're buying a piece of salmon from Alaska, please sign this phone number.
That's right. Tim, you're breaking up just a little bit, but yeah, your point about how these relationships matter.
Ooh, I don't know what happened there. I lost you guys for.
Yeah. You kind of blipped out, but you were getting.
I'm back. I'm back. So, anyways, I don't know. That was my internet connection here. Probably not so good. I guess we need better broadband here. But it's just that's what I'm hoping to accomplish with this, is to get use this to get more dialed in to help people with their struggles, and they can help with ours. Because when you I did learn that when you put a phone number, that's one of the, you know, for people to call, they will call your customers, and they don't like the voting public that's helping them. So we can help each other if we go through. It's not a good picture here in New England. We're making it work, but I've had to do a lot of things that are not what I'd recommend for the normal person to make it work. I look a lot older, Bob. I thought about that today. You know, from this battles that certainly aged me. I know it happens in time, but certainly fighting policy against people that have a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of way to mess with you is a really tough thing. And, but you know, hey, we're here. Let's make the most of it. Supporting other fishermen. I'm really proud, and thank you guys for the award. I put my whole life into this battle, and it's sad that, you know, the outcome I've still isn't to where I still haven't won, and I'm one of the last few. And we lost hook fishing in New England kind of recently to the players that are forcing this policy here. So it's really hard to know that sometimes you're going to lose some of them for this fall. And I don't know, I'm trying to win that back, and I have a really big battle to do that with a lot going on. But things like this obviously motivate you, and I'm very motivated to do that. So, you know, I can't say enough about the whole organization. The folks I've been, you know, dear to me. You know, we sell Annie Marie shrimp here from my good friend Lance, who I met through Slowfish in New Orleans. You know, Ryan Horwath was here. I've made a ton of great connections, and you see us all in different levels of our business working together now, and that's the best thing that comes out of this. It really is. It's
Absolutely.
you know, you know, I know Steve now. He's a salmon fisherman. I'll probably bug him at some point to try to get some of whatever he's doing out here, and that's what we do.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And that goes back to this idea of relationships matter, right? And relationships matter. Relationships matter in terms of, okay, as Tim was talking about, you know, amplifying the message. Well, amplifying the message is at least one way of affecting change. And, you know, that needs to happen in a lot of these areas where there is disparity in who has access and who doesn't. And it shouldn't be treated like a monopoly game. It should be more like a shared resource. And
So Collis, if I may jump in for a couple comments, and I have to go. One is fishermen, we're dreamers, we're optimists, you know. Something's got to get us out of the harbor to go out out there to go fishing, and it's the belief that we're going to catch fish, you know. So, you know, sometimes we, you know, and when we fishing, you know, Steve, you know, and Tim, when you're heading out to the grounds, you're dreaming, and you're heading back, you're dreaming about what's next. So we're optimists and dreamers. The other thing is, Tim said, you know, he and I met after hours. Well, fishermen, there are no hours for fishermen, and we like to talk at any time. And so I think I want to hand it back to Collis about the rising tide, because that's also, if you bring fishermen into your chapter and event, be prepared for happy hours, you know, unhappy hours, after hours, because that's what we're about. So. And I have to go to another meeting. So thank you very much. Thanks, guys, for showing up, and Mara for making this happen.
thanks, Kev. Enjoy Hawaii, you bastard.
Oh,
Evan, love you, bud.
Pinch. Yeah, it's
But to Kevin's point, first of all, I posted my email address in the chat section. So if anybody wants to explore some possibilities for connecting and trying, you know, looking at these potential rising tide events, hit me up, send me an email. I'm happy to talk about it. We can sort of look at ways at doing that. Localizing these kind of conversation is the best way that we can elevate slow food and slow fish values. And we do that by bringing in voices from the water, whether it's a kelp grower, whether it's somebody harvesting shrimp out of the Gulf of Mexico, somebody pulling set net lines out or drift net lines out of Bristol Bay, or somebody doing scallop dredge out of the Gulf of Maine. These are ways that we can bring these connections together, tell these stories, and, you know, bring people closer to their seafood. So I wanted to sort of bring that around. I know that there were a couple of questions in the chat section, and I think we touched on some of them, but does, you know, for example, there was one about talking about quotas that Tim talked about. It's a federally managed thing. So Slowfish doesn't really have any direct power over how quotas are set, but we do amplify the voices of those who have concerns about the quotas. And we have fishermen around the country and up into Canada who have opinions about how some of these fisheries are managed. Again, through the lens of, like, you know, on a localized level, each one has its own sort of set of challenges and benefits. And we're trying to work with fishermen in elevating the stories where those challenges exist, and look where the values are, the slowfish values are, and how they're doing it, keeping it, you know, from a community-based, local, meaning relationship-based, and the kind of thing, you know, that Tim and Steve and Scott are doing in terms of seafood that has a story behind it and is a direct connection. So again, if you've got any questions, feel free to email me directly. I'm happy to have a conversation, and I'll be happy to connect you directly with Tim, and he'll he'll probably answer your call, but he won't answer mine. So that's the best we can do.
Alice, there was one more quick question in the chat for you. Does propagation of sea vegetables fit under the slow fish banner?
Of course. I mean, yes, kelp growing, seaweed, all of that. We've got one woman in our network, Amanda Swinimer, who just published a book about seaweed growing. And she has spoken on a couple of our webinars and a couple of our events. And again, as with, sort of the fishing that we're talking about, scale matters. So, she does wild harvest of kelp off of the coast of British Columbia, but there was a planned operation, some 3,000 square acres, I think, planned, or 3,000. It's a significant operation that would have sort of an industrial impact. And that gets kind of beyond where we see something that is sustainable. And so, again, those values kind of come into play. When we're talking about good, clean, fair, we mean something that isn't bent towards an industrial scale that kind of gets around that sort of community feel of these fisheries, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions? Somebody has a question. Yes.
I have a question. This is Caroline from Baltimore, Maryland.
Hello.
Hi. We just restarted our chapter, and I would like to know, how should we start getting slow food fish to our chapter?
Well, I think probably the most expedient way to do that would be to email me, and then we can start talking about what your goals are for your chapter, specifically to your chapter. And then we can, sort of look at, possibly some local fishermen there that you might be able to work with.
Okay.
And then maybe host one of these kinds of events, whether it's at a restaurant or at some sort of event space, that you can, have people come together and talk about, these kinds of products. Or it could be something like, what Steve Currian does with Pride of Bristol Bay, where you have buyers clubs in different areas, buying, for example, wild Pacific salmon. That could also be, an opportunity. But I guess the first thing would be to let's talk about what you're looking to do, and then we can go from there.
Okay, thank you. I got your email.
Okay, excellent. I look forward
So
to
the
it.
problem we're having now is,
Yes.
okay, blue crab.
Yeah,
It's so expensive
of course it is.
because they don't have the people to pick it. And
Right.
so, and this is because of COVID.
Yep.
So, so now, I mean, for myself, there's no way I'm going to order blue crab right now. No crab cakes for me until,
Right.
this price comes down. It's crazy. So,
Yeah.
I mean, COVID has just made everything so crazy.
Go ahead, Tim.
We're having that struggle with, so just so you know, this is one of the ways that we can help your chapter is get a hold of me as well. We're struggling to have crab meat up here. So Jonah crab is something that people get quite a bit up here, and we cannot find anyone that has crab meat. I have a seafood store now, and crab meat has been impossible to find. So it's one of those things, try to find something else that you can something else you can sell. Lobster meat you can get up here, but it's wicked expensive. You're talking
$50 a pound.
plus a pound your cost plus.
But we
maybe
still
just-
have our oysters.
and put some more of those. No, and we're the same. Don't worry. You're not alone. We're
Yeah.
fighting with that here too. That's the biggest thing about this. You realize that your problems aren't just specific to you. And
Can
yeah,
you
you're
share
starting
your
out.
email too, Tim, in the chat?
Why don't I tell you
Um,
what, Caroline, why don't you email me and I can put you in touch with Tim?
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we-
right.
He'll
That's
respond
fine.
to an email if I'm looping somebody else in. He'll respond to that.
Oh yeah, no, I will. And the other thing too, it's this, not as a sales pitch, but Steve does salmon. I do scallops right now. You're in Baltimore. You're not far from us. I mean, Ryan Horwath just drove out of here he was on his way out. He's got a bunch
He
of
poked
stuff.
his head in.
Yeah, that was right.
Yeah, okay, that's all.
So, you know, work with some other folks. You can, you know, we send scallops. I send scallops to Lance. You can get, you know, make something else to help you fill the void, and vice versa. I mean, I would love to, you know, have more stuff that has that kind of mid coast, mid Atlantic, you know, something different brings people in, for sure. So that's one of the best things about this, is getting to know people like Lance down in Louisiana, Jacoby, Steve. All of us generally have something that we can all sell, for sure.
Yep.
And generally
Yeah.
speaking, the products you're going to get from this network, whether it's Steve's salmon or Lance's shrimp, are really, really good. And you'll develop a customer base for that. And you can also tell the story of that product. You can say, hey, you know, this is salmon from Alaska. This is shrimp from Louisiana, yada, yada, yada. So you get some help there. And those COVID struggles, they're right across the board. Don't feel alone in that. There's certain things you simply cannot do right now. Crab meat is one of them because of staffing.
Yeah. So
Thank
before
you,
we go,
guys.
Steve, do you have any last words to impart?
Sorry, I had to find the mute button there. No, I think congratulations is due to Tim. He's done a lot of great work. So I think that's awesome. And yes, I think there's a whole network of us out there, whether it's us, Tim, or it's a combination. Like we can all help to get product into your chapters and to help kind of build that awareness. So I think it's a great network to be participating in.
All right. Scott, anything to add from Tetons?
Thanks for having me. If there are any chapters out there that want our take on this, my email's in the chat. And I love the idea of thinking of a local food network as a community food network. It's all about relationships. Thanks for sharing all that. And I'll take the story from all you and share it with our network as well. We'll keep the story going. Thank you, everybody. Definitely. All right. Well, thank you all. Appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. Again, contact me if you've got any questions. And we hope we keep these conversations moving forward. Have a
Thanks,
great rest of
Paul.
the week.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time today.
Bye-bye.
Bye.